place where no one is seen as a stranger, where no one is ever faced with danger. A place that is gentle, kind and light, where nothing would ever trigger a fight. A place that is boundless and wide, where we walk with angels side by side. A place that smiles and happy tears, where our hearts are open and there are no more fears. A place where love is seen on every face and arms are open wide to embrace. A place where everyone measures the same, where you are true though, and yet no one knows your name. A place where mysteries are explored, where truth is accepted and never ignored. A place where those of old age are wide-eyed and still learning, when time seems to rewind and to youth we are returning.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Hello, Pastor Norman.
Well, hey there, Mom. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good as well.
As my old boss man used to say, I'm finer than frog hair.
Yes.
So what's been going on in South Carolina?
Just getting ready for the holiday. That's about it.
Oh, yeah. Well, we kind of, because of Dad's surgeries tomorrow, we got to be there, and we've got to be there at 5:45. Can you believe that?
Ooh.
5:45 in the morning.
Wow.
And so we kind of got together with the family on this past Sunday, past Saturday, which was pretty good. We had a good time as usual, but I'm going to miss having the usual holiday, but we'll be okay, I suppose.
Hey, I got to tell you, it's another day.
Well, the world doesn't stop. It just does not stop. No matter what's going on, it doesn't stop. So how's the mom doing? She baking?
She is baking away. Yes, ma'am. She is doing a lot of baking. I've been doing a lot of smoking turkeys.
Oh, is that what you're going to be doing? I know.
I did two yesterday, and I got one on the grill now.
Smoked turkeys taste like ham. Vern says she's doing they're going to fry a turkey. I fried one year. It was pretty good. They're not pretty, but they taste good.
But I tell you what, once I used to always do the fry, but once I started smoking, you would never do fried again.
I love smoked turkey.
Much tender. It's tender.
Yeah, and it is. It's moist, and it has a different texture to it.
Mm-hmm.
But I tell you, I'm gonna miss having everybody at the house all at one time on this week. But that's okay because we did our thing this past Saturday, and I'm looking forward to this surgery being behind us. As usual, Dad's found something to do at the last minute. So.
I figured that.
True to his nature. Let's see who's here. Hey, Sissy and brother-in-law. My sister's coming up to make sure she can take care of baby girl for us while we're going through the surgery thing. And then there's you, Pastor Norman. And then there's Dee Dee and George. Good to see you guys this weekend past, too. John Greason's in the house. And there's Vern. Thank you for the love gift, Bernie. I got it.
Vern.
And there's Phyllis and Edward. Hey, y'all. And Kayla Brown's back with us today. Hey, Kayla. I'm so glad you're here, sweetie pie. And let's see. What do I want to start with? What you preach on Sunday?
Pretty much, Esther, you're dealing with the kingdom. Talking about power and authority and who we really are. Dad even mentioned Psalms 82 on Sunday as well, about us being gods. Of course. And I was kind of talking about that, how we hid ourselves in that which we were supposed to be caretakers of. We were supposed to be dominion. And so when I read the scripture in Genesis concerning how Adam and Eve hid themselves amongst the trees,
Mm-hmm.
The voice of the Lord came through the garden seeking for them. And so they hid
Mm-hmm.
themselves in that which they actually were supposed to be having dominion over. And so I was
Wow.
explaining that and did a demonstration of it. Mhm.
That's good. That's good. Sunday when we were reading the out of the little book that I had, I'm going to read some more from that tonight. That really about the at that day, coming into that day.
Mhm.
That was that really stayed with me and stuck with me. That there's a day when we all have a realization of the presence. And that realization is when our eyes come open. You know, it's interesting when I thought about that, when I just said the eyes coming open, I just thought about the scripture in Genesis where it says their eyes were opened.
Open. Exactly.
Mhm. So there was even then an aha moment. An aha moment. Carolyn Pastor's back in the back of the house somewhere. No, not miss anything. He's just, I don't know what he's doing back there, girl. And let's see what she says. I have a question. How do you separate dominion and power from ego? Separation from hiding and consecration. Hmm.
That's a good one.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, I need to go and tell my husband to turn the TV down. So can you just talk to them for a moment, Pastor Norman?
Okay.
Remind him that it's Tuesday.
I can. Oh, he done forgot it was Tuesday. Okay. Yes. Kayla, you wanted to know the difference between separate dominion and power, separating dominion and power from ego. Well, Kayla, I would have to say, one of the things that we need to do is actually, as we've been talking about quite often on this particular broadcast, that we are to walk in our true authentic self, which has uh, no identity with ego, no attachment with ego. And so dad always mentions about having to do something, the doer, and so forth. So uh, dominion pretty much means to reign and rule, but you cannot reign and rule unless you are walking in your true authentic self. And
Hmm.
so there's something I matter of fact, there's a verse I want to go to. It's in Proverbs. I just thought about that. Proverbs.
While he's looking for that, uh, Kayla, can you tell me what brought you to asking that particular question? I need to know that because it's coming from a place, it's coming from somewhere, and I just need to know so that we can answer it accurately. I need to know that. Okay, so if you can, just give us a little brief summation of where that came from and why that question came up. Okay, you found your scripture, Pastor Norman. Come on in
Yes,
here. Today.
yes, I did. It's Proverbs 25, verse 28. And I use this actually Sunday, and it says, he that hath no rule over his own spirit is like a city that is broken down and without walls.
Okay.
So pretty much here when we talk about, remember, God gave Adam and Eve dominion. He told them to have dominion and to subdue. And once again, that what he said was to have dominion over the fowls of the air, every creeping thing on the face of the earth, the fish in the sea. But it never said that we are supposed to have dominion or reign over one another. It,
Exactly.
it
Yeah.
never said
Yeah.
that we were supposed to be the carekeepers of God's creation, which means again, he created us in his image and in his likeness, which means as he is,
Mhm.
so are we. But
Mhm.
he needed us to once again have dominion over his handiwork. And so
Okay.
David said it in Psalms 8, what is man that thou art mindful of him, and the son of man that you visit him? You have crowned him with glory, and you made him a little lower than the Elohim. And
Yes.
so
Yes.
one when I think about ruling one's own spirit, because again, we're in a dimension where we seek for recognition.
Yes.
We talked about the attachments that give us identity. And so
Mhm.
one of the things that we know for a fact, and we're even seeing it even more now, is that man, and when I say man, I'm talking about mankind. One of the things that mankind always crave for is power. Power. That's what we see with the different leaders and the wars breaking out and so forth. Is a desire for more power. So I would have to say that's
Mhm.
coming from a place of ego,
Okay.
trying to feed the ego, trying to feel important, trying to dominate someone else in order to feel like you're great. But when we walk in the things of God, we're not seeking for that. We're just being
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
so forth. And so that's something that I realized coming to a place of enlightenment and awakening, that I don't have to go after all of these different things. I don't have to dominate someone. I don't have to be in no sphere of competition with someone. And so
Mhm.
I just
Mhm.
am, and I have to be
Mhm.
content. And Paul said that I'm content in whatever state that I'm in.
Okay. And I'm glad you mentioned that, Pastor Norm. That's a very good explanation for her. Now, she's given me why she came to that question in the first place. She says, I'm afraid of being too far in ego. And with the reference of Adam and Eve hiding in the garden reminds me of myself. I'm afraid of the power of the Holy Spirit because of my flesh, so I hide away. Okay, let's pick that apart just a little bit. She said, that's what makes me afraid. I don't necessarily want to be in a position of power, but I find myself there. Oh, okay, okay. Now I have a better understanding of why your question was posed in the first place. Um, First of all, and of course, you guys, you and Dad, both of you probably have some things you'd like to share with her as well. But first of all, the self that you think you are is the self that wants power. It's the self that thinks it has power. There is no self that has power. There is only the divine essence that you are, that all of us are, that is power. So when I'll say, special abilities start coming through these vessels, these sentient vessels, sentient in the when I say that, I mean the sense organ that we live in, this body, the senses, the five senses. We tend to identify that comes through these senses as if it is a self here that owns that power, when in fact the only power there is that Christ essence that is all of us.
Mhm.
So when ego comes in, and ego again is simply how I see myself. Uh, if I see myself receiving power, and if I see myself giving power out or using power, then I am then in an egotistical mindset. That's a separatist mindset, which most of us find ourselves in.
Mhm.
Uh, because as we come into this existence and we have all of these different physical environments that we enter into, and uh, life experiences begin to shape us, there are areas of our lives where we are afraid and we feel threatened, we feel small. And
Mhm.
so it's normal for all of us, any of us, to want to have power. And most of the time when we say power, what we want is control.
Exactly.
And so the fear of being, of having that power and getting out of line is simply your mind that's dictating that it is the one who has the power, when it is not the one that has the power. The power comes through you as a portal, but it is not something possessed by a self, a personal self. Uh, I'll say it, and I'll use this example. I remember when Catherine Kuhlman was alive, and you may have heard us talk about her years and years ago. Catherine Kuhlman had this tremendous healing ministry. And I remember distinctly when we went to Pittsburgh. You remember that, honey? I went to Pittsburgh for our honeymoon, belated honeymoon. And we went to her service, which was in Pittsburgh. And when we got there the night before the service, we went to find the church where it was going to be held. When we got there, it was about maybe 9 o'clock that night. And there were people already on the porch of that church. And they told us, well, if you're coming tomorrow, make sure you get here early because it'll be full. And sure enough, I don't remember what time we got there, but we got there pretty early. And it was packed. In fact, the whole sidewalk and the streets were packed. And I think they even had to block that street off because it was so many people. We found ourselves at the doors, actually maybe 3 or 4 feet from the doors, and on that porch of that church. And they said, when you get ready to go in, push in, because if you don't, you won't get in. And we pushed when it opened up, but we were still sitting in the back when we got in. Now, I remember distinctly, there was a young man who came while we were standing on the porch waiting for the service. He was intoxicated and he was deaf in one ear. He was intrigued by what was going on, but this young man found himself healed, but Catherine was nowhere around. So that healing did not depend on her body.
Exactly.
It did not depend on her personality. It did not depend on her, him being on the premises with her, because she wasn't even there yet. It had nothing to do with her speaking a word over him, her praying for him. The power was impersonal. The power that healed him was impersonal. Yes, it was there because we all gathered to see Catherine, but it had nothing really to do with Catherine.
Exactly.
So this power that we talk about, Kayla, is really an impersonal power. It is not a power to own. So maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that. Pastor, you want to say something to her about it as well?
We went after power to do things for years.
Mm-hmm.
And one day I heard the word ego, and I started talking about it in the church. But I didn't know enough about it at the time, except for it's not ego. It's not you being high-minded, or you being with the appearance of being special,
Yeah.
or being different from everybody else. Or ego is not what the mind gives a definition of ego that is absolutely away from the truth of ego.
Mm-hmm.
So before I could go on into this, I had to do a lot of investigating and studying. And the more I studied, the more I began to talk about it, the more Spirit began to reveal to me what it looked like.
Yeah.
It's not being haughty, high-minded, and all that kind of stuff.
Sometimes it's being a victim.
Yeah.
It has a victim mentality sometimes.
Once you understand it, it can only be understood by research and investigation. Uh, you will see it when somebody's in a car, or you will see it when a person, the way they walk. You could see it in the person's, the way they do they fix their house. But the clue to this is that if it is the day of the Lord for you and it is time for you to find out, you'll see it. But now I read all kinds of books about it, and they didn't fully answer me. So he showed me through chance, trial and error, what the ego really looked like. Because there are some people around the church was going around saying, every time you look around, it's ego. Just like when everybody found about you can have what you say in confession. And that was not really a solid way, even though we have people who specialize in it now. But they still haven't seen that a confession of awareness is almost like, let's make it simple. You're going to have to do some studying. You're going to have to find out what Jesus meant about it's no longer I that live, but Christ that live. You'll have to investigate over time and patience that there's a part of you that goes to a football game, a basketball game, and you want your team to win and the other to lose. That's ego. But in that maturity of it, you may not be ready to fully implement it as a way of seeing. Then pretty soon, as you get more into it, you'll find out that the fear that you have of making mistakes in finding out about yourself is the ego blocking you from finding out about who it is. I will say that the ego is not you. It is an energy that gives off the idea that you are it. Another way to look at it is ego is, we are 3 or 4 of us online, maybe more. That individuality ideal is the ego. There's good ego and bad ego.
There's healthy ego.
And there's healthy egos.
Yeah, there's healthy ego.
And then there's recognition of ego to the point where you can see it everywhere you go. But you can get caught up with seeing the ego to where you lose sight of your eternal self. There are 2 things you have to look for in the eternal self, and that is in reference to ego. Jesus said he was this and he was that, but you have to be able to discern, and that comes by him inside of you, showing you who it is that gets the feeling that it has arrived because it understands the ego. That's the ego doing that. And when it says, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that's the ego trying to renew itself by reading, studying, praying, seeking God. There is a place where you do that, but you do it better by recognizing the ego. But you don't stop doing it because you find out that the ego is there.
Exactly.
You have to work yourself through the weeds. Now, all the time this is happening, it is God in you as you that's pretending like you are having trouble with the ego. It's 2-sided. It's like you're walking down the middle of a road and you look on both sides. You can see water on one side and you can see rocks. But who is this that's walking down the road that's observing the rocks and the flow of water? Once you understand that neither one of them is reality, the only thing that's reality is the present moment that you are, without any observation of observing the water and the rocks to the point of getting your attention. It's very intricate and it's very simple, but it can be very devastating to somebody who is trying to get it and think they have it, and finding out that even the research after it has to be recognized that it could be possibly the ego. So you don't stop your studying and your investigating for it. But once you find out what it is, it's because the Spirit of God reveals to you the nature of God. The nature of God, it can be revealed so clear that you can call it discernment.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to mention this as well, Kayla, and for all of you guys who are listening, because I know that Kayla's probably brought up some things that you have thought about as well. Uh, the ego is both a sense of inflation and a sense of deflation.
Mm-hmm.
It can show itself as I feel like I have arrived, or it can show itself like I'm never good enough. And so it can flip flop either way. But when you really break it down, and Pastor was talking about that and saying what I'm about to say in another way, is that when that happens, you find yourself actually living out of your conditionings.
That's ego.
That is what ego is, living out of your conditionings. And some people, when they have a sense of power coming through them, it causes some inflation. And in your case, what's happening is the mind has hijacked
Mm-hmm.
what's taken place and has claimed it as its own. And so you have now begun to recognize it, which is a good thing. It's a good thing that you now are aware of the inflation. But to be afraid of it is not necessary, not needed, because you are already aware. Because you are aware, you'll have a line drawn. It's like a line drawn in the sand where there's certain things you will not allow yourself to do because you are aware of it. So it's no real reason to guard yourself from having that sense of inflation. It's no way to guard yourself against it. It's something that the human side effect, as Dad would say, it's a human side effect that when you do something good and you feel good about it, it inflates you. That's just the way it is. It inflates the mind. It inflates the way you feel about yourself, and your self-concept begins to change. Now there is a dimension you can live in where the self-concept means absolutely nothing.
Exactly.
So we can talk about that later, but there is, and that's when Dad said you need to go ahead and study, go ahead and do your research, because you will come into that as you do that. A self that has power is the self that would be put on a cross. I'll say it like that.
That part of us that gets indulged in these seeking times for a specific reason to get power and to be stand out in front of a congregation of people as though God has given you a certain particular gift. Humility is one point that has to be aware of in any situation.
Yeah.
And you are not going to get by. Here's where it works. Since the event question come up, God's got a big pen. And when you get puffed up enough, he'll stick a pen in your butt and let the air out of it.
Oh yeah. You won't have
And
to
the
do
first
anything.
thing you're going to do with the ego is bind Satan. It's not Satan doing that.
It'll be a
God is the one that's sticking the pen in
and
the
you can
balloon.
always tell when the pen's being stuck, because then you'll have this sense of feeling small, like a pin in it.
Rejection is one of them. Not
Yeah.
feeling qualified is another.
Yeah.
And you may be not qualified for something, but ego is causing a split in you that I did that other job. Why can't I do this? But not realizing that may not be for you.
And and that's a young man that I watch frequently on YouTube, who's a minister. I think he's he has a very valid ministry, but he's right at a point of being inflated. And it's not so much just him. Somebody's at our door.
Excuse me.
It's not at a point of being, he's at a point of being inflated because of what people are doing in making him an icon and idolizing him. and so therefore he is endangered of becoming inflated.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Um, when kind of the simplify, because I see where we're kind of teeter-totting between power and having authority.
Mm-hmm,
Um, to
mm-hmm,
see
mm-hmm,
power simply means that we have a capacity or ability to do something. I have the power to walk, or I have the power
yes,
to talk.
yes, yes.
But when we use that word power, oftentimes we think about, like you said, having some type of authority or some type of influence on people to wow them, to
Mhm.
attract them
Yes.
to ourselves. And so that's where we get into the charismatic abilities. And so even when Jesus had told them to go to Jerusalem, wait on the Holy Spirit, they shall receive power. We know that comes from the Greek word dunamis, which means
Mm-hmm,
personal
mm-hmm,
power that have
mm-hmm.
the abundance of ability to perform
Keep
miracles.
talking. I gotta shut the door
All
because
right,
they're
and
talking loud.
perform mighty acts. And so there's a difference between having power or the capacity ability to do something versus having authority, which means I lord or I control or I'm a great influencer on a group
Mhm,
of people.
mhm,
And
mhm,
so that's where we teeter tot. So there's nothing wrong with possessing power, but
mhm,
man craves the authority to
mhm.
dominate, and that's of course what she was talking about, having dominion. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
sharing something came to my mind of what the Lord said to Moses to the children of Israel while they was in the wilderness, and it comes from Deuteronomy chapter 8 verse 17, and it reads, and thou say in thine own heart, my power and the might of my hand has got
Mhm,
me this wealth. Now it's talking about
mhm,
wealth,
mhm,
but we can also use it for other things as well. But thou shalt remember the Lord thy God, for it is he that giveth thee power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant, which he sware unto thy fathers as it is this day. And so you was talking about that earlier, how we have all these special abilities and we use the word charisma and
mhm.
so forth, and then it for some reason make us feel special. So we are forgetting that is there someone else. And I love when you brought up Catherine Kuhlman, because when you mentioned concerning the young man, something came, and I'm gonna create a word.
Mhm.
In that situation, we saw the omniness of God.
Yeah,
Meaning
yeah.
everywhere. So she wasn't there, even though it was her event. She was having the services, healing services, like they were saying, and she wasn't even there yet. But the guy showed up, and it was the presence of God. God all everywhere, all omnipresent, everywhere, all at one time. At the same time, we see his omniscience, which is what? All powerful. He's all
Mhm,
potent. And
mhm,
so again, that's where we understand concerning walking in oneness with God, where no matter what, his power, his influence is everywhere, all at one time. And whoever that, like you was talking about the gentleman, people, if they understood that God was there, they will
mhm.
realize that the activity or what the miracles or whatever is manifested is he's just a vessel, is actually coming from the essence of God.
And I think it's one of the reasons that, and you're so right about that. One of the reasons we fall into that kind of a trap is because we've been taught over the years in our Christian circles that God is remote and that we have to connect. And when we connect, then if we connect uh, in a get a good connection, we will have power.
Mhm.
Um, and so again, I want to say this, that a lot of times the power that we seek is really uh, us trying to feel that we have some semblance of control. And our lives in this world are so uncertain in this physical dimension that we look for any small evidence of having some semblance of control. And so I have to say that back when the faith message first came out, with Kenneth Hagin and Copeland and all of those ones who were teaching that. You saw a lot of word of faith churches pop up. They popped up all over the place. And it was just simply people learning that they could speak to the mountain and cause it to move. But in the process of that, though, the ego, or I should say the mind, not so much the ego, we give it a term, we call it ego, but it's really the nature of the mind. The mind hijacks that truth, and then it wants to control, or it gives us some semblance of control. I can speak to my body and cause it not to be sick. I can affirm, continue to affirm over and over again, and my body won't be sick. Or I can keep affirming and I can speak it into existence, and I can create my own reality here in this world. And it's actually true, but it's not true. I remember we practiced it. I mean, we listened to cassette tapes. That's back in the day of cassettes. We listened to cassette tapes when we were in bed sleep. We listened to them over and over. So to speak the word of faith that was like we finally had some power. We finally had some control over this uncertain existence. But eventually, and while we did speak things into existence, we did draw and manifest things to ourselves. It eventually, what started to happen was the ego began to come up with all of these different things that it would like to do. And it was an ego run amok. I'll just say it like that. And it was then that we began to see a deflating, or like Dad said, a pin being stuck in a lot of what was being said that we were confessing and affirming. A pin was stuck in it. And so I go back to the young man that I said I've been watching, who's now at the peak of his ministry. He's really in his season, and it's dangerous. He's endangered of being abased. It said, pride goes before a fall. So the pin is coming. And a lot of times and like Dad said, when the pin comes, we think it's the devil attacking. But it's not. It's not. It's just the air being let out of our balloon. Our head is swollen up. And so, yeah.
Now, I want to read something, and then I just learned a word that I never saw before. When you were saying that, and we all got caught up into that, naming it, claim it, confess it, and possess it. But if we be honest and truthful, there were things that we declared and decreed that did not.
Of course. And
it's funny because I taught this on Sunday as well. And it's because it was coming from a place that was not pure. And so when you said that, I thought about James 4, verse 3. Now I want to read it out of the King James, which we are familiar with, but then I went to the Amplified and I discovered a word that I never saw before. And it says, ye ask and receive not, because ye ask amiss, that ye may consume it upon your lust, which is pointing again to ego. But in the Amplified, this is what it said. You ask God for something and do not receive it, because you ask with wrong motives, out of the selfishness of, or with an unrighteous agenda, so that when you get what you want, you may spend it on your hedonistic desires. And so that word hedonist, I never saw that word before, but it's a person whose life is devoted to the pursuit of pleasure and self-gratification.
Yeah. Now, yes. Now, Kayla's bringing out another aspect, which is good. It's good she's bringing this up. She says, I have another question. I don't necessarily feel comfortable with what I'm gifted with. I know it's there, but I'm terrified. I have a deep desire to have no control. How do I manage this without denying the gift that God is utilizing through me? Well, I'm going to say this first of all. You cannot manage it. You cannot manage it. And you cannot, I'll say it a different way. You cannot manage it. And there is no way to prevent yourself from not feeling inflated. There is no way. So you will have to surrender and allow whatever that gift is to be expressed, regardless of your humanity, regardless of what you're afraid of, regardless of what you think you might have control or whatever. So there's no way to really manage it. So I wanted to say that to you first of all.
There's something else underlined there.
Yeah,
She's operating out of fear.
yeah, yeah.
Fear. And she should not be afraid to allow what again, you're who you are. You was created and designed by God. You have a purpose. God is intentional. So with all the abilities that he has given you, and I understand because I'm one that dealt with that will always say, Lord, I don't want to get prideful, I don't want to get a big head. But then we find ourselves putting ourselves in a place where it's still ego because you fighting so hard. I don't want, and I you say to God be the glory, don't give me no credit for nothing and so forth. And I understand trying to be humble, but then you end up imprisoning yourself
Yeah,
and you end up putting not being so confined by the perceptions of other people. You now confining or enslaving your own self of your own perceptions of you. And so just
yes.
be free. Again, you should know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. Just flow in the freedom of God. And so, like Mom said, I mean, we're all guilty of that. There are times where, ooh, God is moving, He's working through us, and woo,
And the,
all
and
of a
the
sudden,
thought, yeah, the thought will go through. Oh, I'm the bomb.
exactly. Until like Dad said, you go pop that.
But this is the other thing I'm going to say it, and it may sound it's not a rebuke or anything, Kayla. I don't want you to take it that way. But there is no way for you to be humble and be proud that you're humble.
Exactly.
If there's proud, if I feel that I'm being humble, then I'm not being humble.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that makes sense, but when you're truly humble, you don't realize you're humble.
Exactly. You don't make mention of it. You said, Mom, you said it the other day. A rich man don't say that he's rich.
Yeah. So that brings me to this. Where I want to read this. I want to read this because Kayla, you bring up some good stuff. Now I'm gonna read this. I read it Sunday, and I want to just read it again. And it's not real lengthy, but just bear with me. It says, recently in a charity drive, a limousine of a famous make was raffled off to raise funds for refugees. The award went to a man who already possessed 17 other cars
Mm-hmm.
and who greeted the news with, good heavens, why didn't someone who wanted and needed a car get it? I have 17 cars already. Why did this man, contrary to all the teachings of metaphysics, win the prize? He had no desire for it, he didn't want it, and was disappointed when it came to him. He held no thought, said no affirmations, declared no truth, in fact, was negative to the whole situation. Why did he win? Now, in this day, when the new old dimension of consciousness is coming into its own, the old worn out habits of human thinking must give place to this one thing, the recognition of God.
Yeah. Huh?
The long years of trying to create a God or trying to use the power of God through thought is over. It is the day of entering into the consciousness of God here and now, a God not created by human thought and not sustained by it, nor made or operated by thought. Consciousness of the presence has come. It is the second coming of Christ
Mm-hmm.
in the individual, the reappearing of the permanent identity of man, which automatically lifts him into the place of the finished mystery at which level Jesus expressed. Jesus always started with the premise, it is done. Thank you, Father. He always counseled, take no thought, knowing that the thought taking process will only produce pain. The more you hear a person making affirmations, the more you know he is not and has not the thing he affirms.
Mm-hmm.
A rich man never affirms that he's rich because he is rich. A well man never affirms he is well because he is well. And so Jesus started with this premise: it is done, it is consummated. Entering this consciousness, he functions from that level and automatically produces the manifestations of that consciousness. Until man sees this, he will perpetually try to work the law of God and attempt to make God do his bidding.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's powerful.
Yep.
That's powerful.
That's it in a nutshell. Mm-hmm. Yep. That's
Now,
it.
Carolyn says this to Kayla and to all of us: power is presence and healing love. To God be the glory. Let go and let God direct your course.
Mm-hmm.
Or let go and let God go his own course through and by you. And so, Kayla, I hope you're getting some of this. We're definitely not experts, but I hope you're getting some of this and it's helping you. I hope it is. Carolyn says all Christians are called to carefree living, whether you like it or not. Peace.
Peace. Peace.
Yes.
Yeah. And I could say to Kayla, I've been where she is or what she's doing. I've been in many others as well. But yeah, because when you do that, you also find yourself walking into what we call self-righteousness.
Yes.
You're trying to be so pleasing to God. You're trying to be humble. You're just trying, you just want to, and then next thing you know, like Dad said, here comes the interruption from God. And then you like, I thought I was doing right. I thought I was living. And you're like, nah, you was operating out of ego.
Exactly. So I pray that it helped you, Kayla, what we said to you. And Dad, we've had so many interruptions. What was that? That was a delivery man?
Somebody evaluating the internet.
Oh, Lord.
I told him we were online teaching about the ego, and he was interested in it. And what he was doing, here's what ego is. I told him, I said, we're online right now. I can't talk. And he kept oozing through the door. Baby girl met him. And he kept oozing the door. And I said, well, we online. What you teach about? I said about how to recognize the ego. And he, oh, yeah, that's interesting. See, he was trying to use his ego.
He's still trying to get a
salesman amp to get me to talk to him. I said, it's cold out here. And I said, you'll have to come back sometime around 12. I said, between now and the next couple of weeks, I'll be recovering from surgery, so I won't be able to talk to you.
Yeah, I know.
He was trying to get a sale, and
y'all were loud. I had to close the door.
I couldn't. And when you tell somebody that the one that don't want to let you go is the ego itself.
He was just
now, ego is what created so many different churches.
Oh yeah.
Ego is what created so many members,
different relationships.
And it's some people call the ego the monkey mind.
Yeah.
Some people call it the self or the false self. Mm-hmm. But even though there's a lot of people that got all kinds of names and brand for it, there is no other way that the mind is going to conquer the mind or the ego, because it is the job of the ego to distract you or distract the attention off of who you really are. Now, I could sit here for the next 50 years and talk to you about it, but here's the clue again. Thou shalt give something in the scripture about Jesus' resurrection. Thou shalt suffer thine hands to resurrection, or something like that, he said. What raised Jesus from the dead was not the ego.
Oh, he said he didn't. He said he will not suffer
now,
his
Holy
body
One shall suffer his body,
corruption.
See corruption.
Yeah.
Now he was telling us and everybody that regardless of how long he stay in there, even though Lazarus stayed 4 days and he just 3, the idea that you want one to come out before the other, and you're asking the question, if Lazarus stayed in there longer than Jesus did, why couldn't he be the Christ? Well, he was. but you got to go past the ego to see it. You got to go past the ego judgments. He was, because it was only Jesus standing there talking to Christ that was in Lazarus that came forth. Lazarus' body heard what spirit was saying without ego. The people around that saw this happen wanted to praise Jesus and walk with him, and he didn't have any trouble with it. In other words, if you do recognize the ego, you got to get to the place or through experience that you have nothing to do with it, and you recognize it. You say, well, how do you control it? You don't.
You don't.
The key to this is finding is looking where God is looking from. Now, as you get further into this, the more you find about the ego, the more you're going to see it.
Mm-hmm.
And once you see it, say, for instance, I'm standing in line in the bank, and there's something in me that says, I wish they hurry up. I do it all the time. It's called rage road. I mean, road rage. It's called rage road. And it's nothing wrong with the ego. It is what do you call it? A ghost with a toothache.
It's a wounded child.
It's a ghost with a toothache, wounded child.
Yeah.
And it is the build up of constant repetition of things. The definition to insanity, and I may say this with respect, the definition of insanity is the same damn thing over and over again. And that repetition is the ego. But so that tells you that the mind is constantly going over things all night long, all night. Don't want to allow the body to sleep because it wants to stay up all night long and chatter.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing that you need to do is to investigate. This is a prenuptial thing, a preview of things that you're talking about, you're asking about, and you're as no one thou shalt suffer thine holy one to see corruption. That's true. You're going to have, once you go into this, I asked the Lord, I said, well, let me stop right here. And I said, I'm right along in the car or the truck. I said, how can I tell the difference between ego and my real self? He said, I'll show you. Oh, you'll see it. And then all of a sudden, I'm behind somebody and they ain't moving fast enough. Ego is called impatience. Mm-hmm. Ego of that car in front of me was designed to show me what ego looked like. That car pulled off, and then we've realized that it didn't go the distance of where you were going. It turned off, and all of a sudden you have a reaction inside. Any kind of reaction that. So this is, if you take, what did I heard Kenneth Hagin say, if you take ignorance outdoors in your front yard and dig a ditch and bury it, the next morning you wake up, you're going to have a crop of ignorance. The stuff grows on the tree. But you must come to the place where, beloved, believe not every thought, believe not every feeling. Mm-hmm. Beloved, separate the feeling and separate the thought to see whether it be of God, ego, or your conditioned self. Yes, now, this will help you if you could. That's why I wish I could have stayed into the brick and mortar, but I couldn't because I like teaching about this. And I knew that here's ego. It makes me want to feel like I'm the only one on the earth that's teaching this. That's not true.
It's not. I have something that I wrote sometime. I wrote it in 2015. I want to just read it to you, Kayla, and to all of you. But I wanted to read it, and it was I had an awakening that morning, so it was my devotional for that day. And it just reads like this. I entitled it, "Never Depreciate What God Has Esteemed." Today, I had a deep realization of the way that I have been disrespectful toward myself and toward God. While listening to myself speak on a recording, it dawned on me that I was pretty good at what I do. It was then that a light bulb came on in my head. I realized that all of my life, I've been guilty of grading myself with a very low rating. I had a vision of a little child standing in front of a sliding board, crying and saying back to his mom, "I can't do it." And the mother, knowing he could do it, felt saddened and frustrated that he did not believe in himself. And I heard the whisper of God's gentle voice inside me as ask this question: why do you continue to put yourself down and give yourself such a low grade when I have empowered you for greatness and hold you with the highest regard? It was after this question was posed to me that I vowed to cease the senseless devaluation of my being and never to again judge my performance so poorly. I remembered that I am made in his image, and it was not serving me or God to think so little of myself. Therefore, I decided to no longer be my own critic, but I would from this point forward celebrate my efforts instead of inflating my faults. So today I will be kinder to myself and lay the inner judge to rest. I will applaud myself for the attempts that are made to accomplish the task set before me. I will endeavor to do my best. I give myself an A for effort and for the willingness to push past mediocrity. I see myself as capable and qualified. I am more effective today than yesterday and will be more effective tomorrow than today.
That sums it up.
Sums it up.
When Jesus said the Spirit of truth shall come, he would take what is mine and reveal it unto you. He will not speak of himself. Ego was being defined right then. Anytime, a lot of time, and you recognize it, but there's only one being that can recognize the ego, dive into it, dive out of it, and not be soiled with it, is your eternal self.
Yeah.
Now, it is very important that you study the main thing. All power is in God. When Jesus healed the woman with the issue of blood, he does that. He did that. He did that by indirectness. He was enough settled and no more war to debate with anybody about who he was as the Father. When I found out that we were in him and he's in us, if I say this, and this is not egotistical, I say we are the ones that raised him from the dead. We are the one that was in him doing the miracles. But through that finite self, it says, yeah, right. You preach that. They're going to shut you down. They ain't going to let you come in.
Well, it's because they don't know who the we is.
That's
the
right.
We that we're talking about is not this human flesh. It's not the person named Antoinette, the person named Clifton, the person named Carolyn or Norman or Kayla or anything. It is the Christ itself inside these physical beings, these physical bodies.
That's right.
So go ahead, Pastor Norman.
I think one of the key things, even in understanding when we use certain words in scripture, in all actuality, when we hear the fruits of the flesh or the walk in the flesh or the word carnal, that is actually making reference to the ego.
Yeah,
that's right.
And I think that's where a lot of people misinterpret. They think, this, but that's not it. I mean, this is just the soup, like Dad would say, the soup. But when we hear about walking spirit so that you will not fulfill the lust of the flesh, that word should be ego.
Yes.
Now, everybody has got that smell.
That smell?
The smell of the ego on them.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody that comes into this dimension going to stink. Your only recourse is to go deeper than you realize now into telling the truth about who you really are without any hesitation, which hesitation means you're going to have that.
Sure.
At the cross where I first saw the light. Okay, you're going to have to investigate it, and it is the Father's Holy Spirit, Christ self, that is responsible for hitting the switch inside of himself. I wrote this down here. God, as us, pretend to forget who he was, then woke up being himself. He pretend that he forgot who he was in all of us. Then while he was here, he woke up. Now, to the degree that you wake up would be to the degree that you see and recognize the ego.
And when he wakes up, he's no longer pretending to be us. He is us.
And you don't pretend to be a Christian anymore. You don't pretend to be a devil. You don't pretend to be anything outside of that you are aware of as your true identity. Now it's going to bounce back and forth. I saw Jesus one time and I looked at him. I said, why does he keep going in the tomb and turning around, coming back out?
That was us.
It's like it was a revolving door.
That was us going in and out.
Yeah, that's us. And okay, answer this. If he was going in and out, and that wasn't him going in and out, but when we went in, we were inside of him and we came out, we were him. Now, let's look at it like this. What is this? Now, this is the nugget. What is this that goes to church to find God? And when it gets there and have a high time, it said God showed up. What is this that goes to Sunday school or take the Bible to work and use it in the break room to cause a discussion to the point that you can quote scripture? See, I thought that if I could read all the Bible and quote every scripture in there when somebody asked me a question, that I was of God. A duck got a square butt and he had square eggs.
Isn't that what egotistical mind? That's what the mind of separation does. It tries to build an image.
That's the Tower of Babel.
And it's funny that you said that, because that when Dad even said it earlier about all of this is not real, well, remember, casting down every imagination that exalts itself against the knowledge of God and bring it into obedience unto Christ.
So do we really need a self-image?
No.
Gonna have it anyway.
I mean, think about it. Why would one of the commandments be make no graven image?
Yeah.
Why would that be one of the commandments? And it's because we are the image of God. So you cannot create a graven image of yourself.
Here's a good one.
Oh my God, you know what I just thought about when you said that? All of these daggone selfies are graven images.
Yeah. Now, I got something I wrote a long time ago in the paper. I am showing you how to use the ego to get money and wealth. Okay. Yeah. That's what he told me. Say what the ego language looks like
to hear,
and likes to hear. Since ego wants to hear itself, use its own language back to itself, to activate itself, to respond to itself, to give to you what you want with mad language. I was saying mad language. It's a mad conversation. But it ain't going nowhere.
But you know what? That's what a healthy ego is. It's when you can go ahead and allow yourself to have the sense of being powerful and still at that point know that that is not who you are, but it is coming from an impersonal power. So it's like you play the game. Play the game.
How many times have you dropped something in the floor?
Enjoy the dream.
How many times have you dropped something in the floor and you reach down and pick it up and you miss it and miss it and miss it? You get frustrated and say, I'll pick it up later and leave it there. And then you never go back to it. What was that frustrated you to bring you to the end of something? Impatience is the ego. Now you're gonna recognize it now that you brought this thing out of the grave.
And you really gonna see
since
it.
The night you resurrected this entity that is the false chatter of the mind and these feelings.
You've exposed it.
There's only one way this can be purified. You have to understand that in Abraham and Isaac, ego said, sounding like God, but it says God told him to slay Isaac, put him on the altar, raise up the knife, and God stopped him. It is God that's showing you the ego, and it's God that's showing you how to leave it alone and just observe it as a watcher and observer instead of a participator. But now once upon a while, once upon a time, once in a while, you're going to want as a participator, you're going to want to eat a tater. And as you eat a tater, you're going to find out you didn't want the tater. And the tater served this purpose to show you how greed and want of a lot of things that you don't really need is ego.
Yeah.
Now you know good well. I talked to somebody tonight. They went to the store and they had to have 6 donuts. But the key to that, they wanted to bring donuts home for everybody else, but they had to eat 1 or 2 of them on the way back to the house. And now they complain about being all out of wax and out of sort. But ain't no use me telling them not to eat the donut. I want them to bring one to me so I can eat one too. So that's called 2 egos sliding into the same big belly. And I don't like Krispy Kreme. I don't like Dunkin'. I don't like her. I don't like this. I don't like wearing that. Look at that ugly coat. Look at that hairdo. That's ugly. Well, look at yourself in the mirror. That's ugly too.
That's the inner judge. That's the inner judge, though. That inner judge.
Ain't no way you're gonna get around ugly.
Sound like ego need to be nailed to the cross.
I mean, that's I was trying my best to get up there.
To get up where?
On the cross.
What'd you do that?
Because I know I want to die to self.
Oh, you were trying to die.
And it wouldn't get up there.
And it wouldn't die.
But when I read Galatians 2:20, I was already stuck. That's been 2024 years ago.
You
that
already
I was
been
there.
died it.
I did it. I did it.
It has already been done to you.
But now that is an awakening. This whole thing boils the egg down to the shell. Crack the shell, and you see you just ate a whole chicken and 1 egg. And I'm talking about the ego. Once you find this out, you're gonna find out that a duck is a duck and an egg is an egg, and neither one of them is concerned about whether they hatched it or not, except when they get through doing what they got to do, they go on about their business. Ducks in the water may fight, but when the fight is over, they start flapping their wings, and everything that they did is forgotten. There's a lot of things that the ego is bringing over in our mind at night to keep us from going to sleep, because it is the ego that don't want to let go of memories. I rest my case.
That's true. That's true.
And ain't no use you going to bed thinking you're gonna get rid of it. I done tried.
Speaking of bed, we've got to go to bed tonight early.
I done tried going to sleep with alcohol and get drunk. And when I was doing that, the bed kept turning around and around and around and around. And I just done had enough of it. So when it made that last round,
it never fails, man.
I stuck my foot out on the floor.
He's stuck in a pattern.
I stuck my foot. I said, I done had enough of you. And I stuck my foot out on it. Was cold. I stuck my foot on.
Okay.
And I stopped. Okay. I'll stop. Somebody might ask the question, is that the ego? Yeah.
Yes.
But I'll tell you this, I ain't scared of you.
Thank you, guys. We've been here long enough. And I hope we helped you guys. Well, it was a good conversation. I'm glad you brought it up. Kaylin, I wanted to say to you too, that when you start to observe the ego, like you said, like Dad said, you're going to see it now more than ever because you exposed its diabolical self. And that's what that diabolical part of the ego is, what you expose. And I want to commend you for exposing, because a lot of us have that, but we hide our stuff.
Exactly.
We protect it and hide it.
The tree of knowledge of good and evil is another thing for ego.
That's
another word for it.
That's what happened. Exactly. Ego was born on that day.
Ooh. When you hear somebody say, I was born in sin and shaped in iniquity from my mother's womb, go back up in there, because it ain't going to make any. I got to stop.
What is wrong with you? Are you sleepy? What?
No, I'm telling you, Lord, and it sounds humorful, but that's the way I said it.
Crazy.
That's the way I said it. Once you come out, you can't get back in there. So once you find out what the ego is, you cannot reverse it.
And I shouldn't be laughing because
right.
Nicodemus pretty much said the same exact thing. So,
You can't go back up in there. Okay.
Nicodemus.
You can't do it a second
I'm
time.
going. You guys are terrible.
Well, I'm just telling you, John Recent. I'm telling you.
We want to speak. We want to speak God's active healing power upon you, Dad, for tomorrow.
Yes,
everything goes well, and so we thank God that everything will come into alignment, and we speak strength in your recovery.
Thank you.
10 hours from now, that's where I'll be.
10 hours? It will be 10.
I'll be over there when your morning comes.
John says, awesome broadcast evening with all the interruptions.
What a interruption. It's almost as worse as the woman that had the issue of blood got disrupted.
Right. It's like everything that could happen just happened today.
Well, that's okay. We got it tied down on both sides of the road to hold it in the middle and it's still working.
Dad forgot that it was Tuesday and everything.
I did. I forgot. I was in there getting ready to take me a nap.
Yeah. But tomorrow he'll be taking a nap.
Oh, yeah.
And getting his back fixed. So, as Pastor Norman said, keep us in prayer, send us lots of light and love, and we will see you guys on Sunday.
Thank you.
Pastor Norman has his live stream at 9 on Facebook under Norman Armstrong Ministries, and you'll see us on Cornerstone Life Center, either on Facebook or on YouTube at 10 o'clock.
Sunday morning at 10.
And we thank you so much. I just want to remind you. To give. Express your abundance by giving.
Please do.
Express your abundance by giving. And Pastor Norman's, I got his here somewhere. There it is, right there. That's his Cash App in case you want to bless him. And I know you do.
Thank you.
Go ahead and bless him and bless us too. And we thank you so much. And look, we won't see you before Thanksgiving. We'll see you after Thanksgiving. So have a wonderful Thanksgiving day and be thankful. That's what Thanksgiving is. Be thankful, be grateful, and raise your vibration by being grateful. And listen, don't focus on all of the crazy stuff that's going on in this world. Put your focus on the good part. Put your focus on the beauty. Don't look at the ugly. Look at the beauty. All right. And we love you. We'll see you next time. See you later.
Happy Thanksgiving.
There is a place where no one is seen as a stranger, where no one is ever faced with danger, a place that is gentle, kind and light, where nothing will ever trigger a fight, a place that is boundless and wide, where we walk with angels side by side, a place that smiles and happy tears, where our hearts are